Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Albion Tonight. I'm so excited to be back with another banger episode. This episode is going to be on cookbooks and female empowerment. And today I have, you'll never guess. Guess who? Say something.
Me.
Diane.
Yay, it's
You
me.
win if you guessed before she said her name. Yay. So, all of you have hopefully probably seen a cookbook before or used a cookbook before.
100%.
And have you ever looked at a cookbook and been like, where did this come from? Why do we have cookbooks? I feel like it's pretty self-explanatory because like families make cookbooks.
Yes.
But like, do you ever think about them?
I mean, I feel like as a person that cooks a lot, like there's a need for collecting recipes
Yeah.
and making sure that they don't die. So yeah, it makes sense to me.
Yeah. And I think it's something, I think out of any historical thing, it's something that I've like wondered more about the nuances of. But like, there's a lot of things I look at and I'm like, why do we have that? But then they're like cookbooks, it makes sense.
Yeah.
So we're going to start with just a very brief little bit on the history of cookbooks. But mainly we're going to do some case studies on some Victorian and Edwardian cookbooks and kind of what those meant for like the social history of the time.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
It's going to be good. So, of course, like writings about and oral traditions about preparing certain things go really far back. They have different documents from Rome where people write about olive oil and how to keep olive oil and stuff like that. So that's kind of in Western tradition, one of the first things where you kind of see people starting to like write stuff down. But of course, like we talked about, there's probably a lot of oral traditions about how to cook things that have always been around. And then in terms of like written cookbooks in published or manuscript form, it basically goes back to about the end of the 13th century when manuscripts were really popular. You know, you had monks like writing manuscripts or writing copies of like the Bible, but you also had people starting to compile recipe collections. They were predominantly with very short recipes, and they were in several different languages. So that's kind of where it gets started. But then the big thing that Henry Notaker says about cookbooks is that, quote, starting in the 18th century, recipe collecting was increasingly taken over by women. Handwritten cookbooks actually became a fashion within the upper classes at that time. A German culinary manuscript from 1785 informed readers that women should not be without such a work. Many young girls prepared handwritten cookbooks before they got married and took charge of their own households. Those who didn't want to write one themselves could pay someone else to do it, just as was the habit before the arrival of printing. End quote. So that's kind of when you start seeing the association of like women with cooking in the publishing world is around that time period. I had like a book history class, and one of the things that we talked about is after the invention of the Gutenberg printing press, and when printing was more commercialized in the 1600s, that was kind of one of the first places that you would ever see a woman's name printed on as like the author or like compiler of a work was cookbooks.
Oh, okay.
So this is kind of the first place that you start seeing women accredited. Sometimes I think some of these cookbooks were actually written by men under women's names too, which is another interesting thing, or compiled by men. And then it makes sense that they might put a woman's name on it, because another thing that a lot of cookbook historians kind of discuss is they're a weird liminal space, because since it's a collection of recipes, there's not really one author, even though sometimes one author gets listed, because sometimes like they're listing recipes that they've gotten from people throughout their lifetime and then saying, here are my recipes.
Right.
So they're kind of this weird space, but this is where you kind of see women starting to get credit. But then you also see that like gendered expectation of like women getting married, taking charge of their own households, and being expected to have like their own good little set of recipes that they make. So
Yeah, that makes sense.
yeah. Also, even historically, you know how like if you go to like a bookstore, sometimes there's like a big cookbook section and you're like, why are there so many cookbooks?
Yes.
Like there's so many. Well, even apparently in the past, like about 75% of titles in European languages were cookbooks
Oh,
near
interesting.
the end of like the 1600s and early
Yeah.
1700s. So yeah, we've always had an overload of cookbooks, apparently. Like when, I mean, it makes sense because also like when printers were running more as a business of like, I have to print something that will sell. It's like a relatively simple thing to compile, especially if you want to do a short one. And you can print a bunch of copies and then like maybe everybody in town will want to like know how to cook something like
Yeah.
Mary's stew or something.
I have always had like a certain like distrust towards them. I think because I almost could like sense that because like so many of the recipes, like you look at it and you're like, no, this doesn't make sense. I don't
You're like,
trust
wait,
this.
why is it that much?
Yeah, I'm like, is this a real recipe? Are they real humans doing it? And like, I feel like right now, especially, like for me at least, they're no longer, yeah, a lot of the new ones coming out. I just have a lot of distrust towards them, and I think because of just our culture, at least speaking for myself, I tend to use a lot more like video recipes or ones that I can find on the internet.
Yeah, that's like really popular
Yeah,
nowadays.
and then you can see like the comments of people who've tried them and like actually know that this was something made to be eaten, you know? But
Yeah,
yeah.
I think that's honestly part of like the like manuscript tradition was kind of like writing it for yourself and just exchanging it with people you know, and you can say, "Oh, this is good. Like I made it."
Right.
Or like you can try it. Or even like that the use of women's names. I mean, of course like women are publishing them, but even though we don't really get the cult of domesticity where it's always like women in the kitchen in like that more like idealized version, you definitely still in the 1600s and 1700s have this idea of like women know how to cook. You know,
Right.
like
Yeah.
you like these people know how to cook. And so like publishing their name when you start printing things also makes sense because in a culture where they didn't have like the video recipes and stuff, that was kind of their version of like, okay, this feels like a person that like
Yeah,
I
it's
could trust.
trustworthy. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. One of the early published cookbooks that I recommend checking out is The Art of Cookery by Hannah Glass. It kind of predates the period I'm specializing in, but this is probably one of the most famous historical cookbooks. And it's just like one of those ones that you can see was published by a woman. It was post printing press. And also it influenced, like, you can kind of see the origins of like some more modern recipes in there, like the older versions of them. So it's just kind of a cool little like time capsule of cooking.
Ooh.
So I'll have that listed at the end of the episode. But now we're going to kind of, so that's just kind of a brief history. Do you have any questions about the history of cookbooks? I'm not like a huge expert because I focus more on some case studies, but
No, I mean like I'm just here for the ride. I'm
just here for
just
the
wow me.
Okay, I'm going to wow you. All right. Well, so now we're going to kind of get into the 19th century where we do have the cult of domesticity and kind of the dual nature of cookbook publishing for women because it's both kind of portrayed as like a service to like men in the patriarchal structure of households to like know how to cook good food for your husband and kids, but it's also like an independent labor of the author. So there's this really famous Victorian household management book called Mrs. Beeton's Household Management. You'll never guess who it's by.
Who's it by?
Mrs. Beeton.
Oh my gosh. Wait, was her name Beaton?
It's Beeton.
Okay.
Isabella Beeton,
Okay. Okay.
a respectable middle class Victorian woman
Perfect.
from England. Yeah, so this book is used in a lot of historical studies as examples of like Victorian respectability rules. Like it has a whole section on like calling cards and everything. So it's actually like an eclectic book. It's like everything from like cooking to like how to say hi to your friend.
Okay.
It's great. I think I want to know how to say hi to my friends better. But this is her intro to the cookbook, and I just found it like really fascinating. So this is her intro. I must frankly own that if I had known beforehand that this book would have cost me the labor which it has, I should never have been courageous enough to commence it. What moved me in the first instance to attempt a work like this was the discomfort and suffering which I had seen brought upon men and women by household mismanagement. I have always thought that there is no more fruitful source of family discontent than a housewife's badly cooked dinners and untidy ways.
Okay.
Men are now so well served out of doors at their clubs, well-ordered taverns, and dining houses that in order to compete with the attractions of these places, a mistress must be thoroughly acquainted with the theory and practice of cookery, as well as be perfectly conversant with all the other arts of making and keeping a comfortable home. In this book, I've attempted to give, under the chapters devoted to cookery, an intelligible arrangement to every recipe, a list of the ingredients, a plain statement of the mode of preparing each dish, and a careful estimate of its cost, the number of people for whom it is sufficient, and the time when it is seasonable. For the matter of the recipes, I am indebted in some measure to many correspondents of the English Woman's Domestic Magazine, who have obligingly placed at my disposal their formulas for many original preparations. A large private circle has also rendered me considerable service. A diligent study of the works of the best modern writers on cookery was also necessary to the faithful fulfillment of my task. Friends in England, Scotland, Ireland, France, and Germany have also very materially aided me. I have paid great attention to those recipes which come under the head of cold meat cookery, but in the department belonging to the cook, I have striven to make my work something more than a cookery book, and have therefore, on the best authority that I could obtain, given an account of the natural history of the animals and vegetables which we use as food. I have followed the animal from his birth to his appearance on the table. I have described the manner of feeding him and of slaying him, the position of his various joints, and after giving the recipes, have described the modes of carving meat, poultry, and game. Skillful artists have designed the numerous drawings which appear in this work and which illustrate, better than any description, many important and interesting items. The colored plates are a novelty, not without value. Besides the great portion of this book, which has a special reference to the cook's department, there are chapters devoted to those of the other servants of the household, who have all, I trust, their duties clearly assigned to them. And then ... I wish here to acknowledge the kind letters and congratulations I have received during the progress of this work, and have only further to add that I trust the result of the 4 years' incessant labor which I have expended will not be altogether unacceptable to some of my countrymen and countrywomen. Isabella Beat.
Wow. I like how opinionated she is.
She's very opinionated.
Yeah, she's such a G. Also, what's cold meat?
It's just like, think of like lunch meats, like dishes you can prepare with cold turkey. Like meat that doesn't have, like usually still probably cooked, but like you can serve after it's being cooked. Okay. It's kind of like something that would have been considered economical then as it is kind of now to like have like a turkey sandwich, or also like sometimes people would keep their leftover roast beef and make like roast beef sandwiches and stuff.
Okay, yeah, because she was like, she particularly, I was like, okay.
I think that's kind of showing her like these are recipes that everybody can use, and like they can help you like make your food go farther and like be cool.
Okay, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I find this super fascinating because I think it's doing so much in like such a short amount of time. Because although there is this whole thing about men being so well served at the pubs that the housewives have to better themselves to make the men happy, there's so much in here that like shows her personality. She also talks a lot about like, I worked so hard on this book. It was so hard, guys.
Incessant labor.
Incessantly, which both might be to combat, still at this time, there would have been kind of that belief that women's publishing was like not delicate enough, that like they're stressing themselves out too much. Like Virginia Woolf famously a lot of the times was being told not to write because they're like, it's not good for you. So it also might be her kind of saying like, listen, like if I knew that this was going to be as hard as it was, I wouldn't. So she's kind of like defending herself and being like, as a woman, I can still publish this book. I wasn't trying to step out of my womanhood. But then at the same time, she's still like, I'm a bad butt. Like, I'm cool. I worked really hard on this book. And then also, um, it's like very interesting to me, like this whole animal anatomy thing. Of course, like it was really common. Like there are a lot more people that would farm a couple animals at their house if they could. We're buying there were butcher shops. I talked about in my beef episode where like you would buy a cow and then slay it that day and then sell all that meat that day. And so like the process from like the meat to the table was a lot less like mitigated than it is now. But I also think it's really interesting because also like her showing like anatomy and stuff shows like intelligence and her knowledge about other areas of life and like a well-roundedness. And it's just really fascinating.
Yeah, for sure. And like spatchcocking a chicken, which is like when you like tear it apart and like basically make it flat, right? That's like a skill that most people nowadays do not have, but like it came from it's like more in it's more in like French cooking that was like more normalized, or a lot of European cooking, and like those you see that it's still in the countries where like the process from meat to table is like, or like field to table is, yeah, like just a lot more, I don't know, like unmitigated. I think you're correct in saying that, as opposed to nowadays where we just go in and we buy like 10 chicken thighs in 2 packets, you know? And it's just like,
Yeah.
well, I don't really have to worry about like taking out the spine of a chicken, you know?
Yeah, and I think it's like interesting too that like as like dainty or like feminine as they could portray cooking, there's actually a lot of physicality that she's also emphasizing,
Yeah.
like intelligence and physicality to the work, and I like that.
Yeah. She's skillful, she's knowledgeable, she's a baddie.
The baddie, she's got her typical British like humility where she's like, I hope it's not altogether unacceptable, even though, you know, I worked 4 years end on end, but it's okay. So yeah, that's kind of an example. The first case study I had that was kind of an example of like the dual nature of both like women having to kind of defend their femininity and been like, oh, like this cost me so much labor and I wouldn't usually like work this hard at something like a man would. But, you know, I'm telling you how to manage your house. So she's like balancing a lot. But also it's just showing you that like people are people and she has like a lot of personality and opinion. So I really like that.
Yeah.
So the other case study I have is the Cookbook by Catherine Dickens.
Oh?
Yes. So everybody knows, I don't know if everybody knows yet, but I really like Charles Dickens, guys. His works. And he had a wife, as most famous men did. And he wasn't very nice to his wife.
No.
Especially towards the end of their marriage. He cheated on her. Whole shebang. You can find tons of recent scholarship on this, which I think is great. But anyways, what a lot of people don't know about her is she published a cookbook.
Oh?
She published her own cookbook. It was called Lady Maria Clutterbuck's. Let's see, let's look at it. What shall we have for dinner?
Okay.
So what a great name. What a great name. It's all about the question, answering what shall we have for dinner. When people ask, you have the answer. What were you saying?
Wait, did she like write it down under the name of Mrs. Clutterbuck?
Yes.
Okay.
And I'm going to get into why she used the name Mrs. Clutterbuck, actually.
Okay.
So there was a play that Charles Dickens like produced when he was younger, and she played Lady Maria Clutterbuck, which was the unlikable wife in the play.
Oh no.
And she used that name.
Okay. Wait, actually that's a boss move.
Yeah. Well, also the interesting thing is it's both anonymous, because one of the things that Catherine Dickens did a lot in her life is that to Charles, his like public image was so important to him. Like he put it over like almost anything else in a lot of cases and in a lot of examples. And she protected that public image a lot. And so like she probably published anonymously not to take away from him or for people to speculate. But at the same time, the name, although it's kind of like a very embedded, like inside joke,
Yeah.
it's still like technically something that still connects her to
Yeah.
Dickens and to who she is.
Yeah.
But also it's kind of very revealing of like the first edition I think was published before the marital troubles got really bad, but you can kind of see like her own feelings and like her connection to this relationship and these memories, but also this, perhaps it's hard to say exactly what she thought about having played this character. But even I think her sister or one of her relatives got to play the pretty character,
Oh.
but she played the annoying wife.
Okay. Yeah.
So lots of feelings. I feel like there's a lot of feelings embedded in here. We can't say what people in the past were thinking, but she definitely was doing something.
For sure. For sure. That feels pointed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's a book that I got from the Dickens Museum by Susan M. Rossi Wilcox, where it has both the whole cookbook, but it also has like some information on it. So here's a little bit of information on how popular this cookbook was. So this cookbook, quote, was evidently well received. In October of 1851, Catherine published a second edition, and 4 months later, in 1852, she produced a revised new edition. By 1854, Catherine updated the menus, doubled the recipe appendix, shortened her pseudonym to Lady Clutterbuck instead of Lady Maria Clutterbuck, and her publishers, Maria Clutterbuck, and her publishers, Bradbury and Evans, were able to retain the price of 1 shilling. Judging from extant copies, the menu book was reissued again after some minor editorial changes in 1856 and 1860.
Okay.
So several editions
Yeah.
is basically just what I wanted to point out. Several editions that she was constantly revising. So as much as like everybody thinks about like her husband and like how prolific he was, for the limited ability that she had to put her own work out there, it was selling.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she was updating it and she was involved with it. And also one of these reprints, the last one, was literally like right after her divorce.
Oh.
So
Dang.
she was a girl boss. Girl boss.
Wait, did people know? I mean, multiple editions came out. Did they have like an inclination that she was the wife of Charles Dickens, or like, do you think it was more anonymous?
See, this is the thing that is difficult to answer. And from what I read, it was hard to obtain really a clear answer. But I would say, certainly, I think people who knew her would have known.
Okay.
People that were close with the family or had been at the play might have had an inkling. But it's really hard to say how hush-hush. And there might be more sources on this that I didn't look over. So I could be wrong. So I just want to say, like, I would do more research before issuing an official statement. But it really did seem like she kind of kept it secret, but like her girlfriends and like her family would have probably had an idea. Okay. Also, the intro, there's a very clever intro to this cookbook. And I was so excited when I first read it because I was like, oh my gosh, this shows how clever she is. But most scholars who have studied the cookbook think that Charles Dickens, wrote the intro for her.
Oh.
Which makes me sad.
Why? Why?
Because it's very much in his style.
Okay.
And I can see why they think that. And I mean, I think that they're probably right. Because I can imagine him being an attention hog, and that has no historical basis, but I can imagine. And it did read kind of like Dickens when I first wrote it, but also they were a close couple, and lots of their early letters kind of reveal that they did kind of like have quips with each other and share a sense of camaraderie and a sense of humor. So it's like, it would make sense if she wrote similar to him Anyways, but this is also the sad thing. Like, why did he write the introduction? But
Yeah,
that also shows that they used to like work together. And so it was really hard for her when he started cheating on her and like not wanting to be together anymore.
Oh, dang. Would he have wanted to write the intro for something that was like supposedly penned by Mrs. Clutterbuck? Or is it like a funny haha moment? Or is it like this is how I'm actually feeling and in the relationship? Or is it both and it could have just gained different meanings at different times?
I want to say it's probably like both. Cause like when she first used the name, I think it was more like, I want a pseudonym. Oh, I've played this character. But then like with time, it also kind of had meaning to her
Yeah.
and her life. And I don't think that the intro was necessarily written in bad things. And like a cookbook was a respectable and a good thing. And also the cookbook that she wrote, What Shall We Have for Dinner, definitely reads a lot like a very respectable upper middle class cookbook. She has a lot of like regular recipes, but most of her things are suggestion for bills of fare for large dinner parties. Like she has a recipe for like strawberry jam to serve like 20 people, and then like a long list of like how to cook a bunch of fancy oysters and things like that.
Mhm.
So it's like a very respectable thing. So I could see, I don't think he would have thought it a bad thing, right? The introduction.
Okay.
Do you want the introduction now?
Yeah.
Okay.
I do.
I wasn't going to read it because I got mad that it was written by him, but I will read it now. The late Sir Jonas Clutterbuck had, in addition to a host of other virtues, a very good appetite and an excellent digestion. To those endowments I was indebted, though some years the junior of my revered husband, for many hours of connubial happiness. Sir Jonas was not a gourmand, although a man of great gastronomical experience. Richmond never saw him more than once a month, and he was as rare a visitor to Blackwall and Greenwich. Of course, he attended most of the corporation dinners as a matter of duty, having been elected alderman in 1839, and now and then partook of a turtle feast at some celebrated place in the city. But these were only exceptions, his general practice being to dine at home, and I am consoled in believing that my attention to the requirements of his appetite secured me the possession of his esteem until the last. My experience in the confidences of many of my female friends tell me, alas, that others are not so happy in their domestic relations as I was, that their daily life is embittered by the consciousness that a delicacy forgotten or misapplied, a surplusage of cold mutton or a redundancy of chops, are gradually making the club more attractive than the home and rendering business in the city of more frequent occurrence than it used to be in the earlier days of their connubial experience, while the ever-recurring inquiry of, all caps, what shall we have for dinner, makes the matutinal meal a time to dread, only exceeded in its terrors by the more awful hour of dinner. It is to rescue many fair friends from such domestic suffering that I have consented to give the world the bills of fare, which met with the approval of Sir Jonas Clutterbuck, believing that by a constant reference to them an easy solution may be obtained to that most difficult of questions. What shall we have for dinner? MC.
Oh my. Okay.
Yeah. So in the
Okay.
character of Lady Mariah Clutterbuck, there's a whole made-up husband who's very hungry.
Yes.
And then the bills of fare are both... The historians have kind of analyzed the bills of fare, and some of them are probably things that she had actually served. Some of them might be ideas from other places, you know. But even if it was written by him, it's very interesting that like she's kind of taking on this persona of someone like who's always trying her best to satisfy her husband.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Wait, what are bills of affair?
Bills of fare are just like a menu, like a multi-course menu.
Oh, bills of fare, like
yeah, like
fare,
F-A-R-E.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Um,
And they would have to like give out bills of fare to people, like.
I don't know if you'd always put it out. You could put it out on your table, but it's more like I will include a picture of this in the episode of one of the bills of fare, but they're more like, I think, for you to know what you want to have come out with what at each course.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. But I will include a picture of like what a bill of fare looks like. It's kind of like if you've ever been to a restaurant that has like a preset menu. where you like go, if you like sign up for like the multi-course menu or something where they give you an appetizer, a dinner, and a dessert, there'll like be a menu that kind of lists everything. It's like that.
Okay.
But yeah, there's also a lot of Scottish recipes or Scottish influence recipes in here, and Catherine Dickens had Scottish heritage. So it's a little bit of like her and her past and her heritage in there. And it was, like I kind of said, it was kind of her way of inserting herself and her work. She was hosting, Charles Dickens liked to host a lot of dinner parties. You go to the Dickens Museum, they have the table set up with like who could have been sitting where and kind of like try to make you imagine like a dinner party going on because it was actually a common occurrence. So she was in charge of like making sure these things went right, making them happen, allowing for society to get together and celebrate him. So she's such an unsung hero, and it makes me really upset. She also helped with these dinner parties while pregnant most of the time.
Oh, dang.
Which became complicated because it wasn't necessarily super respectable, but so much, it kind of felt like so much was expected of her in a lot of ways, in a lot of instances, that it is recorded that she, at every time she was pregnant, almost always still showed up to a dinner party, even when she was far along. I think one of the farthest along she was at an event was 7 months pregnant, which is very uncommon in Victorian society too. Because I think like today that could be like, okay. But like that's kind of like a lot to expect from a woman nowadays when most people went into their confinement after being, I'm not sure exactly how many months, but really once you start showing you're mainly in confinement, you're not going out in society a lot. You can still go visit people, but you're not going and attending like public events, whether they're dinners held at your house or otherwise. But she was keeping it up just as much as when she wasn't pregnant, as when she was pregnant.
Wow.
Like these bills of fare and the work of making sure everybody was happy and taken care of.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I mean, because I'm pretty sure we learned that like Charles Dickens was kind of an attention hog and like to have to like really extravagant kind of dinners, but also afterwards he would get on his little podium and do a reading in front of everyone.
Yeah, like he would do readings at his private parties and then, you know, of course, the bigger public ones. But yes, he would like perform for people at parties. He liked doing like magic shows.
Yeah. So all of those shows, like there's somebody working them, maybe pregnant at the time.
Yeah.
And probably never got kudos. You know, that's so sad.
Exactly. And even though they would have, of course, I also want to recognize like they would have probably had some servants who were doing a lot of preparing of the food as well, or most of it. But it's still like she was still very heavily involved, enough so that she could write her own cookbook.
Yeah.
And you can kind of see that. I think that, you know, once again, this is just me kind of like not something I would do in like professional history, but in like the podcast, like reading more into personal history. Like I think there's definitely a reason she chose to publish a cookbook, not just because it was really one of the only ways that she could get published. Because she couldn't have really gotten published like her husband. It took a lot more work. Even though women were still getting published then, it was a lot harder. And there was a lot more backlash. And especially because he cared so much about his public image. Like if his wife was like publicly trying to publish like fiction or something, it would probably cause some sort of controversy. So it was one of the only ways. But I think she also kind of chose a cookbook because that was like showing what she was doing.
Yeah. Wow. Dang.
Yep, that's my second case study. Any other questions before we move on to the last?
No.
Multi-case study. All right, this is the last multi-case study. This one is about how cookbooks became a way for women to utilize their purchasing power to support their own causes and communities.
Oh.
So as much as it was one of the places where women could publish themselves, it was also a place where they could exercise their own agency to influence events, as they've always been doing. And so women could buy cookbooks from people they support. So like if you knew Catherine Dickens and maybe knew that this was her pseudonym because you were her close friend, you could go buy it or buy even the multiple editions and be like, oh, I'm supporting you. But also in the Edwardian period, when suffrage became a very important cause, there were lots of suffragette and suffrage cookbooks that were published. And one of the things that's really interesting, and I'll kind of show about these cookbooks, is there are like some clever recipes and stuff that are oriented towards like thinking about suffrage or are more suffrage specific. But a lot of the recipes are fairly common recipes that like it's not like anything spectacular special, and not in a bad way that it like wouldn't be good food or something, but it's like some of them are like a basic scone recipe or like a basic stew recipe, and it's I like a lot of people buying these probably knew how to make them on their own. So you're kind of buying the cookbook, yes, to look at some of the recipes, but sometimes just to show that I support suffragettes and people who are into suffrage.
Oh. Do you think also maybe because if these recipes were simpler, that means that they would have spent less time in the kitchen? Do you think that has something to do with like how they were thinking about the ways that women were using their time, or like being made to use all their time in the kitchen and like therefore relegated to that specific domestic role?
Yes, I actually, that is such a good question. And I think that that is also 100% something going on is like, here are some recipes. There's also specifically like in the introduction to some of these books, the mention of them being like economical, or some recipes literally being listed as like economical. Like there's one for economical lemon cream, which also means both cheap, but it also means like not a lot of ingredients and you can make it pretty quickly. So like there is definitely this thought, not only to like considering everyone's needs and feelings, but definitely I think some of them being simpler recipes is like you can support the community, but also you can spend more time on suffrage or more time on the other things that matter to you than just cooking. Because there's also a section for suffrage workers,
Mm-hmm.
which I can't tell if it refers to protesters. I think it might actually refer to also like men who were lobbying for suffrage who had political positions, but they have like recipes to like fuel them and give them lots of food to fight hard. But I think it might also refer to like people going out and doing the protests and the marches, like the women with the signs and the white dresses.
War fuel. I love that.
War fuel. So also another thing that I think is interesting, and also this is just part of going back to the nature of cookbooks is like dual, multi-authored, because once again, there's the debate, like, is the person's name on it the person, or is it like all the people that compiled it? And even we heard Mrs. Beaton kind of say like, oh, I owe it to this ladies magazine. Like some of these recipes are from that. But in the suffrage cookbook, women's names are accredited to each recipe because it's a community of contributors. So it's basically just a bunch of people in support of suffrage who like submit their recipes, and each woman gets their name, and they're recognized and kind of established, and it shows like organization and unity. And even though I think this is a common choice and like was also just made for logistical and legal reasons, I do think it's a small choice with like a big impact. The like women getting credit for the things that they said and did individually throughout the book.
Yes. Ooh.
Woo, woo.
Woo.
So I have some examples from the Women's Suffrage Cookbook that was published around 1912. It was published by the Women's Printer Society. So there are also publication societies now at this time focused primarily on printing women's works.
Exciting.
And women's things. It was compiled. It's also written as being compiled by Mrs. Audrey Dowson. So once again, kind of this call to like, we're a community of women who came together to make this happen, which I think is important in a cause where they're trying to like get people to actually come together and make change happen. So I have a few recipes. Some of them have more of a point. Some of them are more just to make history come alive. And some of them are just funny or entertaining.
Okay.
Yay, 1912. So the first one is baked bananas. Quote, take some not too ripe bananas and lay on the bar of an ordinary fire and leave until the skins are quite black, to be eaten very hot. They can, of course, be baked in an oven, but the result is less satisfactory. The bananas should not be peeled, but should be lightly slit with a fork down one side and the contents eaten with a spoon. Miss Athea, Southport.
Oh.
I liked this one because it was very simple. It was the simplest recipe I've ever seen in my life. It doesn't need to be complicated to be important. And once again, I think it does go back to like what you were saying about also like letting women have time for other things, but still feel fulfilled as like making yummy food for themselves and their family and like getting to feel like the domestic work they're doing is important. Cause it's like you just take a banana and you basically have like a dessert.
Yeah. Honestly, it sounds good.
I want to try it.
Yeah.
That's why I put it in here.
Because like once you cook it, it's like, you're bringing out the sugars more. And so like, honestly, I feel like it's also fun eating from like
From the banana.
From the peel that's been like blackened and toasted. That's fun.
I also just thought it kind of brought to life, there were like ovens and there were hobs, like, and by hob, I mean the one over the fire. And then like bars that you would put over the fire to cook. But I also think it kind of shows like a cooking method that was used at the time. Then this one I really liked. It's for light dumplings. And my favorite is just like in italics below the light dumplings. It says much liked.
Okay.
It kind of feels like the trust me, it's good.
Yeah.
People like it. So yeah, it's just flour. It's a pound of flour, a half teaspoonful of salt, 1 teaspoonful of baking powder, and then you just mix it into a smooth, clean paste very quickly with cold water. Roll into dumplings and drop it once into fast boiling water in a fairly large saucepan. Put lid on tight and boil fast for 20 minutes. Serve quickly on a hot dish with hot treacle and a sauce tureen handed to eat with it. On no account lift the lid during the boiling or the dumplings will be heavy. Mrs. Gayton from Merstham.
Interesting.
Yeah, they're not like the kind of dumplings that we're used to. They're just like bread things.
Right. It's more like chicken and
dumplings
in the South. Yeah.
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 And so,
But sweetened with treacle.
but sweetened.
Honestly, I would try it. I would try anything.
You would try it. Yeah, it sounds great. She's putting them in the thing. But then also, once again, like they don't necessarily have anything much to do with suffrage. It is kind of about the like purchasing power. Although there will be some comments later. And then this one I liked because I had a realization when I was reading this one.
Okay.
So creamed eggs. Put some cream into the bottom of scallop shells and break an egg carefully into each. Add salt and a little cayenne pepper and bake in the oven about 5 minutes. The eggs should be just set. The oven should not be too hot. Spoons are handed round with this entree, as if properly done, the eggs cannot be eaten with a fork. Mrs. Morgan Williams, Swansea. I like this one because she just says that the oven shouldn't be too hot and that the egg should be just set and you should just know, basically. And I liked this because it kind of reminds me of my grandma's recipes where you're supposed to vibe it out. But also, 2 things. So, like, it also shows that, like, things that might not be explanatory to us, like knowing when the eggs are just set, might have been really common. Like, there might have been, like, so much proficiency in the kitchen that it was like, oh, duh. But then also, I realized that, like, when authors write recipes like this, in this book, it's like frustrating as a modern person, like trying to recreate it. I'm like, I have no idea how to actually recreate this. I don't know how to make the oven like not too hot and like just make sure they just set and like make sure they can be eaten with a spoon instead of a fork. But it also shows that the author always expects the reader to feel comfortable with their own judgment. And I realized, like, in a society where people feel so much pressure to conform to certain standards, cooking is a place where like women can express their own judgment pretty freely.
Interesting.
Like even in the recipe books, it's like, you know when it is. And then of course, like a lot of the recipes in this book, as like a lot of my family recipes now say to taste on a lot of the things, which of course is like a duh, like just put as much salt as you like, you know, that's not that weird of a thing. But also it made me realize that it's like, it's one of the places where women are being trusted with their opinions and trusted to know and not being questioned about whether they know what to do or not, or whether they'll be good enough or not.
Yeah. Yeah. I do think, because like to me as a person that does do like a lot of cooking and like reads recipes, like just set means like essentially like
Yeah, like it has meaning.
over easy probably, or something
Yeah.
just hardened. But like, yeah, I do think it's interesting
It's still
that,
kind of up to your own
yeah,
judgment.
it is like
Like,
the mystery of it is kind of appealing.
yeah, like it's frustrating in terms of thinking of cookbooks functionally, but also like thinking about, for one, how much it's kind of dual-sided because it kind of shows how much like women were expected to just like know these things, to be a woman, like, oh, even though I'm sure there were plenty of bad cooks in the Victorian era. But at the other hand, though, I'm actually fascinated because I've never thought about how much cookbooks trust you and how
Yeah.
you almost feel implicitly trusted. As much as the intros are like, if you don't cook well enough, your husband's gonna go to the pub, and it's causing so much domestic distress and connubial unhappiness. But at the same time, like reading them, it's like, oh, like there's a trust for like the women,
Yeah.
And especially since this is a suffrage cookbook too, I think it's kind of like these are just community recipes. Have fun, do them how you want, but like just
Right.
support the cause.
Yeah, yeah. Sure.
And then the last one that I have a picture of. Oh wait, no, I have more. I have a lot more. I lied. I had too much fun. Okay, this one is for pigeons.
Okay.
Pigeons a la rustica. 2 pigeons, 2 spoonfuls of oil, 2 spoonfuls of vinegar, slices of bacon, small piece of butter, pepper, and salt. Take some small mild onions, peel them, and soak in cold water for an hour. Put the pigeons wrapped in slices of bacon into a casserole. Cover with the onions, add pepper, salt, a bit of butter, and the oil and vinegar. Cover closely and cook gently for about an hour. Signora E.B. Dobelli in Hampstead. Pigeons.
Okay. I've had pigeon. It's good. But
Yeah.
yeah.
You don't know if it'd be good?
Um Honestly, I think it'd be probably pretty good because like,
Yeah. I feel like it's pretty good. I have recipes where I just do oil, vinegar, salt, butter, bacon. This was once again, I just picked some to just kind of like a variety of things to show like what kind of ingredients and stuff people used
yeah.
and what
Yeah.
kind of like also you can see here like there was like a casserole dish. Like just kind of things to like bring it alive.
Yeah, I like to think that we I think it's interesting that we're still using casserole dishes, and like there's probably looked probably more like cast iron or something like that, but like the thought is it's like it's the same thing, right? Like big container that you can probably this big container that you can probably just put something in and leave in there for a bit and you'll have a good dish at the end. And
Yeah.
I like that. It feels like cuz there's a
Makes
lot
it a little easier on you.
yeah, there's a lot of recipes are just like just crock pot recipes, like
Uh-huh.
just made to be like yeah, just
Yeah.
yeah, really quickly. Basically zero prep. But like it has salt, sugar, fat, acid, heat, so it's like yeah, I don't think it'd be
Yeah.
bad, honestly.
Yeah. Well, it also shows what we were saying about the recipes was that like it also seems like as much as what I was saying too is it's like it's nothing crazy. So it also shows that the purpose of the book wasn't just to cook them, but they are also all helpful recipes of like you don't have to use a lot of ingredients. You just need to let it sit for an hour. Like you don't have to spend a ton of time and you have more time for like advocating for your rights or just more time to not be cooking. Um, yeah, but also I think it's like interesting because it shows different things people eat in the past. Because I think like in the Western world, sometimes we think it's always been like super basic, like just like chicken and beef and stuff. And like people don't realize that it was like super, like it's super normal. Like different cultures eat different things, but also even in Western tradition, it's like people were eating things like pigeons
Yeah.
and like all sorts of different game and different animals. And I think sometimes people nowadays get like so weirded out. Oh, this animal's eaten. Oh, this animal's eaten. And it's like, it's honestly like you could probably find cookbooks from a lot of different cultures that have that animal. And even your culture is probably eaten that animal at some point, whether you
Yeah.
know it or not. So,
Definitely like a result of capitalism and having to like make sure that there's I don't know, like something that's able to be mass produced and like
hmm
so everybody can have chicken, pork, beef, like the main meats, Um and like you can kind of see this in like uh produce as well.
Yeah.
Like we use the same 6 types of apples, you know?
Yeah.
And like even in the United States alone, in the continental United States, there are literally hundreds of varieties of apples, but we just kept going with the same ones and being like until we didn't even realize we could have a choice of other apples.
Yeah. So I think it kind of shows like yeah, it's just interesting how like cooking has changed over time and like how different our palates might be now because of that optimization than like what people's were.
Yeah.
And then also this is like signorina. So it's I want to say it's Italian.
Okay.
Which also it's kind of interesting. Like in some ways, this cookbook tries to be some of it is just because of colonialism, but some of it is like they have like some recipes contributed from like Scottish things that are less traditionally eaten in like England outside of Scotland, and then like they also have like Italian recipes, and then of course because of colonialism, like there's a lot of curries and like bobotie and stuff like that
Ooh.
in the cookbook as well. Um, Also, I just had to because of all of the difficulty in the beans on toast episode. There's not beans on toast in this cookbook, which makes me feel better about my hypothesis that it really ramped up like World War II-ish, 1930s-ish.
Okay.
Yeah, Great Depression-ish. But there is a savory haricot pie, which is the type of beans that are used in beans on toast. So they were putting the beans in pies. So it's a precursor.
What's
in my opinion.
haricot?
It's you know what navy beans are?
Yeah.
That's the British word for them.
Okay.
It took me way too long to learn this. But yes,
Okay.
that's the British word for them.
Was it like the same recipe for beans? Like the sweetened kind with a tomato base? Or like
No,
was
it's
it
just the beans, but this is kind of when they start showing up in British recipes.
okay, cool.
Well,
Cool.
they showed up a little bit before this, but I kind of feel like the pie with the like bread something and the bean something, it's starting. The cogs are turning.
Yes.
But also because it's a pie and not beans on toast, they have a whole section on savories, which are like cheese on toast, tomato on toast, eggs on toast, like savory dishes you could serve with like tea and stuff like that. They have a whole section on savories and they don't have beans on toast. Also supports my hypothesis. This is 1912. There were some people on their blog saying that beans on toast started in the 1920s, and I haven't found any evidence of that. So I just wanted to say I'm right.
Okay.
But anyways, here's the savory haricot pie. Put a layer of cooked haricot in a buttered pie dish. Then I'm sure the British probably say it haricots, but I'm saying it the French way. In a buttered pie dish, then a layer of carrot and turnip, previously parboiled. To fill up the dish, pour a little good gravy, cover with good white sauce well seasoned with made mustard, chopped parsley, etc., and coat thickly with breadcrumbs. Dot over with bits of butter and bake from 20 to 30 minutes. Many variations will suggest themselves: cauliflower, parsnip, vegetable marrow, sliced tomatoes, or beetroot, instead of other vegetables. Mrs. E. Adair Impey, Kings Norton.
Okay. Yeah.
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 And she, once again, the variations will suggest themselves like that. Trust yourself. You have good judgment. Which is both like a common thing in culinary things because we all have our own preferences, but also like, I think like actually not a common thing for women in published works a lot of the time that like, you're right. You have good judgment. And then for our soda throwback, there was a homemade ginger beer recipe. It was pretty self-explanatory, so I don't have that one here. But there was a homemade ginger beer recipe. So it was a happening.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was also, remember all that talk about like temperance?
Mm-hmm.
There's a temperance drink.
Okay.
So multi-causes going on here, suffrage and temperance. It's great. It's called a stinger. It says in parentheses, a cold weather temperance drink, not for children. I don't know why it's not for children, but it's still not for children.
Yeah, I thought since they're not okay.
It's still not for children. I think
tell
it's
me the
just very
recipe.
strong taste.
Ah, okay.
2 pounds of loaf sugar.
Okay.
one
That seems like a lot of sugar.
1/2 ounce of essence of cayenne. 1/2 ounce of essence of ginger. 1/2 ounce of tartaric acid. 3 lemons, rind and juice. 2 quarts of boiling water. Peel the lemons and boil the rind for 10 minutes in 1/2 pint of water. Strain and add to the rest of the ingredients and 2 quarts of boiling water. Stir until it is all dissolved. This makes about 4 bottles of concentrated essence, to be taken in the proportion about 2 tablespoons full to a tumbler of hot water. Mrs. Swanwick, Manchester. That's why there's so much sugar. It's a concentrated essence. I was scared.
Wait, why wouldn't children be able to have that?
I think maybe they just don't like the cayenne and the ginger.
Okay.
I think maybe it's just so you feel cool. Like you feel like a real woman. Your kids can't have it.
Yeah.
Also, I wonder if it's because of the tartaric acid. Just like nowadays, like we don't give kids honey under 1 year old because of like the health risks.
Right.
And then for a while, we didn't give kids peanut butter when they were younger, but that like doctors have since changed the regulations on peanut butter. But it also might be like Victorian regulations of like what a child was thought to should have versus not have that are different than like what we have now because it's constantly changing.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And then, like I said, there was also like chutney, curry, bobotie. Yeah. Then there were also things outside of cooking in the suffrage cookbook. There were smells, like scent recipes for potpourri, and like perfume, and green herb backpacks for preventing moths.
For preventing what?
Moths from eating your clothes.
So you would like put them in your closet or something?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then there was a whole section included on how to care for invalids, like really sick people with like soups, cures, and medicines.
Mm-hmm.
And there's also a whole recipe for feeding cow brains to the invalids and like all about how to like take the cow's head and what to do with it, which reminded me of the Mrs. Beaton and her whole thing about the importance of knowing the anatomy of an animal.
Hey, yeah.
So I think it's like really easy, like especially because of like the little 1950s pictures of like women in the kitchen. I feel like we're like, oh, like Victorian women were like sitting over here in their cute little Victorian dresses, lounging around on their cute couch, and then going over to the kitchen and like gently putting things over the fire and stuff. And it's like, no, they were like tearing a cow's head apart to feed to their very sick sister.
Nice.
Yeah.
I like that.
And then there was a whole girlhood. Girlhood encapsulates many experiences.
Yeah.
You can carefully put stuff over a fire. You can dance in your ballet slippers. You can host dinner parties while pregnant.
You can rip open cows' heads.
Exactly. Girlhood it encapsulates like the whole range of experience at this point. And then there was also more miscellaneous section. And I don't know, I just really like this section. It had like tips on how to sew and knit like a baby blanket and like other treatments for like your kids and stuff. So it also kind of felt like women trying to help each other with like common problems that maybe they didn't have many people to talk to at the time. Like, you know, your husband might not know because of socialization and stuff how to help with the baby blanket or what size it should be or anything like that. And so like having other women be like, oh, this fabric worked for me and like it was a good length. And oh, this worked on my kid's cut and things like that. Like I feel like would have been actually very helpful because I know I always need to ask people's advice on things sometimes that I just was never taught.
Yeah.
There's also just like a section on how to preserve flowers, which I think is very cutesy. To remove scratches on furniture, to smooth wrinkled silk, to take out iron mold. I'm trying to figure out what that means. I have this whole page, but now I'm confused. Wait. Oh, okay. Wait. I think it's like mold on iron. Iron spots on iron.
So rust.
Yep. They call it iron mold.
I like that. I like that more.
To wash colored silk. All the good things. And then this is the thing I was talking about. Menus for meals for suffrage workers. Quote, it is not always easy to provide suitable food for workers who have to get their meals as best they can during a day's hard and exacting work, often lasting for 12 hours or more. It is essential that the meals should be sustaining, and yet they must be simple and such as can be eaten quickly and also made up of dishes which will keep hot without spoiling and can be eaten with impunity at any hour. The following suggestions are an attempt to cope with this difficulty, semicolon. So for luncheon, 1. Mutton cutlets, cold beef and potato salad, a Victoria sandwich and chocolate jelly. 2. Poached eggs on spinach, fillets of beef or haricot mutton, cold custard pudding, stewed fruit. 3. Cold chicken and ham, sweetbreads and white sauce, cold caramel pudding, arrowroot pudding. Supper, 1. Egg flip, chicken in a casserole, apple and sago pudding junket. 2. Chicken broth, fish pudding, cold leg of lamb and salad, bread and butter pudding, apple snow. 3. Gravy soup, chicken rissoles or chicken cream, galantine of turkey and tongue, milk jelly, summer pudding, bread and fruit with custard.
That sounds pretty good.
Yeah,
Honestly.
I after my long work day, I want somebody to treat me to this.
Yeah. I've actually had arrowroot pudding, but not like,
I was about to say that sounds so good. Is it good?
well, it's kind of like when I say that, I mean like the Chinese version that how
However, it's interpreted in England,
yeah.
some sort of colonial downpour.
Yeah. So arrowroot, I'm guessing she's referring to the starch because when you dry it and you have the starch, it becomes like a coagulant kind of thing. It's like any other starch, so you can use like cornstarch as a thickener in your gravies, right?
Yeah.
But with like arrowroot, how we prepare it is like we have arrowroot powder and then we put in a little bit of water and that like immediately like makes it into a paste. And then if you put in really hot water and you like stir it up really rapidly, it like coagulates into something that is kind of pudding texture. And it has like a very, very light kind of floral flavor, but nothing that's like, it doesn't by itself have like a huge amount of flavor. So you would top it off with some like brown sugar or honey.
Ooh, that does sound good.
Yeah. So I don't know if that's what she's referring to, but like,
I'm sure it's like the British version.
Yeah, it's so easy to do it though, because like it's just like the base of any pudding.
Yeah. And then you just top it with stuff. Yeah, so those are like, and then those are, so the 1, 2, 3, I don't think they're courses in this case. It's like 3 different options. So you can like have options for different days.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I thought like you probably knew, but I wanted to make sure everybody knew what I was saying. Oh, and then this is my favorite. This is their little suffrage joke. Are you ready for the little suffrage joke? It's so good. Okay. Recipe for cooking and preserving a good suffrage speaker. First, butter the speaker when asking her to come with a stamped and addressed envelope, postcard, or telegraph form for reply. Second, grease the dish by paying all the speaker's expenses. Third, put her to cool or to warm, as the case may be, in a room by herself before the meeting so that she may be fresh and in good condition for speaking. Fourth, beat her to a froth with an optimistic spoon, making light of all disappointments. Carefully avoid too strong a flavor of apologies. Fifth, do not let her cool too rapidly after the meeting, but place her considerately by a nice bedroom fire with a light supper to be taken in solitude. If this recipe is carefully followed, the speaker will be found to preserve her flavor to the last moment and will do her utmost to make the meeting a success. Mrs. Bertrand Russell, Bagley Wood.
Heck yeah. Heck yeah. Heck yeah.
Yeah, they're funny too.
Yeah, they are funny.
Yeah, so people have always been funny, guys. Yeah, I just like this. So it was a lot of recipes with like useful recipes and stuff. But then the suffrage cookbooks usually included some sort of joke about this, about supporting the cause. But I also like this because this kind of shows you the experience also of like what it would have been like to be a suffragist or a suffragette and like be having these meetings, but also like interpersonal conflicts between women and like trying to make sure everyone's happy and like, no, you need to like be happy and give a good speech so people don't think bad things about us.
Yeah.
And then there were suffrage cookbooks in the USA as well, that also have some jokes. So I have some jokes from the US now. So you can judge the British humor versus the US humor, I guess.
Okay.
So this is the US humor. So there's the scripture cake, which has all of these pointed scriptures about how to like raise a good son or a good man, like basically kind of saying like men suck because they're not letting us vote and we need to raise good men who will let us vote. So it's just like 1 cup of butter, and then it has like Judges 5, chapter 25, and then the verse, and then like in order to know what to do with the butter, you have to read these like really pointed scriptures.
Okay.
But it has butter, flour, sugar, raisins, figs, water, almonds, eggs, honey, salt, and some spices. So it's like a spiced fruit cake.
Okay.
Yeah. And then there's also pie for a suffragist's doubting husband. 1 quart milk, human kindness. And then it has like 8 reasons. And then it lists all of the things that the suffragettes were bad about. And then it says, bakes the crust with tact and velvet gloves using no sarcasm, especially with the upper crust. Upper crust must be handled with extreme care, for they quickly sour if manipulated roughly.
Oh.
So yeah, it's just kind of a pointed thing about like having to handle people with tact and trying really hard to get people to understand why they're fighting for suffrage. So yeah. The other thing I was going to mention about the US one is that basically it kind of does a similar thing to the Mrs. Beaton's, but also like a similar thing that you'll see in a lot of suffrage things is that the introduction basically discusses a lot about women's roles in like making society more desirably, like socially, morally, and physically. So like the end of the intro to this book says, hence this book, which represents an honest effort to benefit the people, old and young, native and foreign. It is not a speculative venture, but a dependable guide to a most desirable social, moral, and physical state of being. And it has a lot about like, quote, it is our spiritual lives are more or less directly influenced by our feeding habits. Eating and drinking are so essential to our living and to our usefulness, and so directly involved with our future state, that these must be classed with our sacred duties. Hence the necessity for so educating the children that they will know how to live and how to develop into hale, hearty, and wholesome men and women, thus ensuring the best possible social and political conditions for the people of this country, end quote. So like they're really still trying to appeal to like the assumptions and identities that like people have about women and that they have as women about women being like the moral and spiritual protectors.
Yeah.
In this American cookbook.
Yeah, you could like tie it to like how sacrament is kind of like in that same breath of like imbibing something like food and that having an effect spiritually. And
Yeah.
they're kind of, there's like a little bit of a relation between like, oh, and then, you know, as women in charge of these things, like we have an effect spiritually.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like one of the things that suffragettes and suffragists really did, and you'll really see like Millicent Garrett Fawcett in the UK do, is they really kind of actually dug in sometimes into, because so many people were scared of the quote unquote new woman who wanted the right to vote as like being not womanly enough. But they were kind of actually really digging into, no, it's because of the things that make us women, the things that make us different, that we need the vote. Like because we're the protectors of the children, because we're the protectors of this food that is also feeding the spirit and like kind of the sacramental way, we also need to be in charge of the laws that protect these things that are sacred and important to us. Because like their argument was kind of like, well, if you're so worried about us protecting the state of the home and making sure men don't go out to pubs and stuff, then why wouldn't you allow us to make laws that make a safer world for our children and for our homes to be better places?
Yeah.
So yeah, you can really kind of see that in these suffragette cookbooks. So that's kind of, those are the case studies that I had for today. Any comments, questions, or thoughts before we sign off?
Yeah, I think we are so like we have so much access to these things nowadays
Mhm.
that like it's so easy to forget how this can be such like a communal activity or like possess meanings beyond just like use simple utility. So
Yeah.
yeah, I really liked that.
Yeah, I think it because I think that cookbooks kind of just become this space where you actually can see like a published version of like women trying to talk to other women kind of
Yeah.
in their own way, and like how this was kind of their section to put themselves out there in the like public sphere and find each other and like support each other. Yeah.
Yeah. Heck yeah.
Heck yeah. So that's all we have for today. If you have any questions or comments or concerns or more information about anything that I was wrong about, you can email me at albion@gmail.com. I'll see you in 2 weeks. The next episode is a mystery because I don't know what it's going to be yet.
Oh.
Ooh. So, yeah, go enjoy a cookbook. I'll post some of these recipes. You can even try them yourself, like pigeons or bananas or whatever you want.
I want to try
So,
the bananas.
yeah, we'll try the bananas. I'll let you know how it goes next episode after I've had them. So, have a great day, and I'll be on in a bit. Bye.